Behold, he is coming with clouds, and every eye will see him, even those who pierced him. If you've been a Christian for any length of time, you've no doubt heard this verse quoted. It's often interpreted as meaning when Jesus comes, every single person who has ever lived or ever will live will witness it. But is that really what the passage is teaching? Thanks for watching this video from the Bible Fulfilled. My name is Alex Polyak. I am the director of the Bible Fulfilled. And today I am going to be going over the passage, Revelation 1:7, which says, Behold, he is coming with clouds, and every eye will see him, even those who pierced him, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn over him. This is, again, Revelation 1:7. This is a popular proof text for the future coming of Christ. As the argument usually goes, at the second coming, every single person who has ever lived or ever will live will witness it. But is that really what the passage is teaching? As I'm about to show, all Revelation 1:7 is saying is that those who pierced Jesus, or those who crucified him, would see him coming on clouds of glory and in vindication. In other words, Jesus would come within the lifetime of those who crucified him. This is the same thing Jesus says all throughout the book of Matthew. For example, in Matthew 16:28, Jesus says, and he's talking to his disciples, by the way, he says, Assuredly I say to you, there are some standing here who shall not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So basically, Jesus was telling his disciples that there are some standing here right in front of him 2,000 years ago who shall not taste death or who should not die until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. In another passage in Matthew, this is Matthew 10:23, Jesus is talking to his apostles, and he says, When they persecute you in this city, flee to another, for assuredly I say to you, you will not have gone throughout the cities of Israel before the Son of Man comes. So basically, Jesus was telling his apostles that they will not finish preaching throughout the cities of Israel, which is about the size of New Jersey, until the Son of Man comes. So it must have happened pretty soon after that. One more passage I want to quote in Matthew 24, verse 30 to 34. Jesus is talking to his disciples. And by the way, the context of this passage, the disciples had asked when the temple would be destroyed. Because if you remember in Matthew 24:2, Jesus says, Not one stone will be left upon another. Then the disciples asked, when will it happen? And Jesus lists a bunch of the precursors. And then he says in verse 30 to 34, Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And then Jesus says, Assuredly I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. So Jesus is telling the people right in front of him that this generation will not, and by the way, a generation is about 40 years. So Jesus is basically saying within about 40 years, all these things will take place. So these passages all say Jesus would come again within the lifetimes of the people he was talking to. And that's all Revelation 1:7 means as well. When it says, Behold, he is coming with clouds, and every eye will see him, even they who pierced him. In other words, even those who crucified Jesus would see him coming on clouds. Here's another point to consider. Compare the sentence structure of Revelation 1:7 to Hebrews 5:14. Revelation 1 says, Every eye will see him coming, even they who pierced him. Okay, so, and then compare this to Hebrews 5:14. It says, Strong meat belongeth to them that are of full age, even those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. So, strong meat, let me read it again, kind of interpret it a little bit. It says strong meat, and by the way, strong meat is talking about deep spiritual truths. So, strong meat belongeth to them that are full age, and this is talking about mature Christians. So basically what the writer of Hebrews is saying is that deep spiritual truths belong to them who are mature Christians, even those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern good and evil. So notice how both of these verses, right, Revelation 1:7 and Hebrews 5:14, the second clause further explains the first clause, right? In Revelation, every eye would see him coming, even they who pierced him. So in other words, even those who pierced him would see him coming. And in Hebrews, strong meat or deep spiritual truths belong to them that are full age or mature, even those who by reason of their use have had their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. In both statements, the second clause further explains the first. So in Revelation 1:7, those who crucified Jesus, even they would see Jesus coming on clouds. And they did. Jesus came in judgment just a few years later in AD 70. Revelation was written about in the year AD 65, and within a few years, Jesus came on clouds. Notice also that Revelation 1:7 says the tribes of the earth would mourn when they saw Jesus coming on clouds. This is a very meaningful statement. Think about what happened back at Jesus' trial after his arrest. Pilate had asked the Jews whom he should release, Jesus or Barabbas, the notorious murderer. Apparently, back at that time, they would release one of the prisoners. And so Pilate asked whom he should release, Jesus or Barabbas. And the crowd responded, Barabbas. And then Pilate asked, why? What evil has Jesus done? The Jews cried out all the more, crucify him, his blood be on us and our children. This is in Matthew 27:15-25, by the way. So these Jews were taking full responsibility for killing Jesus, even if they would later be punished by God. So this is what Revelation 1:7 is referring to when it says the tribes of the earth, in other words, the 12 tribes of Israel would mourn when they saw Jesus coming on clouds. These Jews who pushed for Jesus' crucifixion would mourn when they saw Jesus coming in glory and vindication and judgment and power. And by the way, this happened just a few years later. Within a few years, in the year AD 70, Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans. The temple was destroyed. The city was destroyed. In fact, according to the first century historian Josephus, 1.1 million Jews were killed and another 97,000 were taken into captivity. So just like Revelation predicted, the tribes of the earth, the 12 tribes of Israel mourned when they saw Jesus coming in clouds a few years later. I want to make a quick comment about the term tribes of the earth. That is not the best translation, as I've kind of hinted at. A better translation would be the tribes of the land of Israel. The Greek word "gay," which is spelled G-E, is translated earth in this passage. The Greek word "gay," which is translated earth in this passage, can also be translated land or soil or dirt or ground. In Matthew 2:6, it's translated soil. In Matthew 13:5, in Matthew 2:6, it's translated land. In Matthew 13:5, it's translated soil. In Matthew 13:25, it's translated ground or dirt. So the context determines the meaning. And the context of Revelation 1:7 clearly shows that land is the best translation. After all, the land of Israel was divided into 12 tribes. The earth, on the other hand, was divided into nations. So, therefore, the tribes of the land of Israel is the better translation. The 12 tribes of Israel would mourn when they saw Jesus coming in glory and vindication. And that's exactly what happened in AD 70 when Jerusalem and the temple were destroyed. It's interesting that even today, still today, 2,000 years later, the Jews still mourn over this event at the Wailing Wall. You've probably seen pictures. The Wailing Wall is the outside wall perimeter of the temple that was destroyed in AD 70. The Jews still mourn over this event 2,000 years later. You always see pictures of the Jews lined up there putting their prayers on the wall and praying. They mourn over this event still as they're wanting their new temple. So here's another point I want to make about Revelation 1:7, and that is that Jesus prophesied about the same event back in the Olivet Discourse in the year 30. And I already read part of this passage, but I'm going to read it again. First of all, let me read Revelation 1:7 again. It says, "Behold, he is coming with clouds, and every eye will see him, even they who pierced him, and all the tribes of the earth would mourn over him." And this is Revelation 1:7. Now, compare this to what Jesus said in the Olivet Discourse. He said, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the earth, or powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. Then all the tribes of the earth would mourn when they saw the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till these things take place." And that's Matthew 24:30-34. This is the same event. I mean, both Revelation 1:7 and Matthew 24:30-34 are talking about the same event. Same coming of Jesus, same clouds, same seeing the event. And seeing doesn't necessarily have to mean seeing with your physical eyes. You see? Pun intended. The same, and also we have the same mourning of the tribes of the earth, the tribes of Israel. So it's the same event. And when did Jesus say it would happen? Within a generation, right? The generation is about 40 years. Jesus said this in the year 80-30, or 33 roughly. So 40 years later, it'd be about 80-70. This timing fits perfectly with Revelation as well. Revelation says, in fact, a few verses earlier, Revelation says in Revelation 1, verse 1-3, "The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave to show his servant things which must shortly take place. Blessed is he who reads, and those who hear the words of this prophecy and keep those things which are written in it, for the time is near." It's the same event, the same timing as Jesus talked about. When Jesus talked about it, it would happen within a generation or about 40 years. By the time Revelation was written, it was about to happen. It was near. It was about to happen soon. So, same event, same timing. Conclusion, every eye saw Jesus coming in glory in the year 80-70.